and then I'm going to Command C, Command V, Shift Command V to paste in place, and then create a duplicate, resize that one, Command C, Shift Command V to make another duplicate, resize that one to match the height of this bar. And if you need to zoom in, then go ahead. And then just do the same for the others. So now that we have our ice cream cones in the correct proportions as our bars, we can just delete this bar graph. And then what we have here is that we've got a little bit of a problem. They're not quite fitting. We do not want to have anything like this. We want to make sure that we have enough room and that things aren't bumping into each other. So what we're really going to need to do is we're going to need to reduce the size of these ice cream cones quite a bit, but we want to do so proportionally. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing a selection around all of these ice cream cones. I'm holding the Shift key and dragging from the corner to resize proportionally. And then this is starting to become a little bit more, it's going to fit a little bit better. And then I'm just using the arrow key to space these out a little bit. I could shift drag these as well to keep them. When I hold the Shift key and I drag, I'm keeping these along the same horizontal baseline, so that's really important too. We don't want to have a situation where they're misaligned at the bottom. All right, and this is sort of rough. This doesn't necessarily, they're looking okay, but it's not necessarily going to be our final. As we start adding other information, like the title and the source and all that kind of stuff, we might find that we need to make these even smaller and space them out even more. So ultimately, it takes quite a bit of adjustment to make this look just the way you want. So now we want to change the color of each one of these ice cream flavors. Let's ungroup again, and then what we could do is, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sample my color that I've already picked. And remember, you could just pause and you could see the 6-digit hex code that I'm using when I enter it into that color picker. Alright, so this is the color for chocolate. And I'm just going to hold the Shift key so that I can select each one of these little ice cream blobs. I need to have these selected first. I'm going to go back, sample my chocolate color, and then replace that. Okay. Let's do vanilla. So I'm going to ungroup. Okay, with these selected, double click on my color swatch. I'm going to paste in my color code. You're going to type it in and hit OK. And then I'm going to do that for the other 3 colors. Okay, so now that we have our ice cream flavors colored in, some of these are going to have little chunks in them. So for example, the cookie dough, cookies and cream, usually that's going to have little chunks of chocolate cookie in there. So let's, in a real simple way, we can indicate that. I'm just going to take my pen tool and I'm just going to draw a little triangle shape, and I'm going to make that the dark brown color from the border. I'm going to, and these are small so they're hard to select, but you're going to want to copy and paste, Command C, and I'm I'm hitting Command Shift V in order to paste in place. And I'm just kind of rotating them to make them look random. Copying and pasting again. Just rotating them a little to make them look a little bit more random. And actually, let's just do 2 in this top one. All right, so I'm going to group these. Just let me make sure I grabbed them all. Yep. I'm going to group these, copy, Shift Command V to paste in place. Drag these over to the next one because that's butter pecan. This one's a little bit smaller, so I'm going to need to reposition these. Ungroup. All right, and if these are going to represent like little bits of pecans, they're not going to be as dark as the chocolate cookies. So I'm going to just grab another color for these, a lighter color, more like a pecan. All right, and then for the chocolate chip, I'm just going to grab this, these original little pen. Oops. And again, this is a smaller cone, so I'm going to have to reduce the size of these just a bit. And I'm going to have to reposition these. All right, so those are looking pretty good. I'm going to save. And for the ice cream cones, we'll just do one more thing to give them sort of a little bit more of a polished look. Let's add a drop shadow to this. Now, it is vector art, and when we add things like drop shadows in Illustrator, those are raster, so they have a resolution and they're made up of pixels. That's okay. We're just doing it very minimally, and these are meant for screen. So it's okay if we have some raster effects on our vector graphics for this purpose, but we don't want to overdo it. Let's just do it in a very reserved sort of a way. What I'm going to do first are make sure that all the objects or shapes that make up these ice cream cones are grouped. And I've already figured out the parameters for our drop shadow. we'll just enter those. What I need to do is select all of my ice cream cones. Again, make sure each one is grouped individually. Choose Effect, Stylize, go to Drop Shadow, and then let's check the preview box. And actually, all the numbers are already in there because I've already done this. So you can pause and copy these numbers. Note that it's not a gray or black shadow, but it's actually a color, and that's the color of the shadow. So we have a kind of a subtle drop shadow applied.